Good morning folks, and welcome to LandRover Beach. The sand all around here is from an epic 2-day sandblasting, but it's been so worth it. This thing is now rust free and it's Firewall, all seam sealed and painted and ready to be reassembled. It's New Year's Day 2020 and we're making the LandRover great again. I'm feathering out all of the edges of where I've ground back with 180, and when I've feathered back all of those edges and got rid of any steps in the layers of paint, I'll give the whole thing a once over with 240, and then we can look at spraying a guide coat of primer over it and getting it painted. Now, of course, with anything that is around 50 years old, it's probably been painted by people who either don't really give a stuff or they don't really realise how important it is to rub down inside all of the crevices and tiny places, because that's where the paint will flake off later. So I'm a bit of a stickler for prep, and I make sure that there's no dirt in the corners, I make sure that the flakes of paint are all off, and I make sure that all the steps in the paint between the layers are sanded back and feathered out. Aside from that massive patch of rust that's been tackled in the previous video, one of the main problems with the LandRover bulkhead Firewall is the fact that it's made out of 11 or 12 separate pieces of sheet steel and spot welded together, and none of those seams are seam sealed, which means that as the paint ages and cracks through body movement, water can get in behind every single lapped join on the Firewall. One of the other problems is by the top hinge, all the water that comes off the windscreen collects in a rain gutter, and that rain gutter directs it straight into the two top hinges. So I'm going to remove these two top hinges and check in behind them for rust, because it'd be such a shame not to do it. Also, on further inspection, I found that here above where the wires come through, there was a small amount of rust that needed to be dealt to. As I work, I frequently blow the thing down, clean it all up, get all the dust off. That's because I've been sandblasting and the sand gets everywhere. So as I work, numerous blowdowns will ensure that any sand that's trapped in odd little places, hopefully, will fall out before I start painting. There's nothing worse than getting a bit of gritty sand in a lovely shiny paint job. So lots and lots of blowing down, get all the dust and all the grit out, dislodge any of the flakes of paint that are stuck behind things, and generally do everything we can do to make this thing last another 50 years. And I'll tell you what, the weather. It's been insanely hot. It's in the 80s in Fahrenheit. In Celsius measurements, it's about 32. It's too hot to be doing this. But anyway, there we go. It's now seam sealed. The white, you can see. I've gone round every seam on the Firewall on the outside. I'll do the inside when I get into there after I've assembled everything that's in the engine bay. Ready to paint. I've primed over the seam sealer. I've masked up everything that I don't want to be painted the sand colour. As you can see, it's all looking pretty lovely. And I've just been into the shed and mixed up the matched paint that I got from the hardware store. It's a full gloss enamel, and I've added a hardener into it. The hardener was called 93 Plus. It was designed to be mixed in with the paint at 93% paint, 7% hardener. It's not something that they still manufacture anymore, but it was a good budget 2-pack kind of alternative. When you're painting a slow drying paint like enamel, you put on just a light first coat, just enough to give it a colour, and then you walk away and leave it until it becomes tacky. Tacky is when it's still sticky to your finger, but it doesn't actually come away on your finger and leave a mark. So I do all the awkward parts first. You can see I'm using a very small spray gun. It's called a touch-up gun, and it's designed for small amounts of paint and for getting into tight spaces. So I'm putting a good coat first of all underneath all of the lips and inside all of the laps, and I'll go over with another 3 or 4 coats after this has tacked off. It's now one cold beer later, and I'm now looking at getting a bit of a build onto this, looking at putting a gloss on it. So I'm just going over the pieces that I painted earlier, which have tacked off, and I'm applying the first of about 3 seriously full coats to give it the shine and the protection. These tiny guns don't chuck out much paint, so to stop it from fogging and ending up with a dull surface, you hold the gun closer than you would normally with a big gun, and that just concentrates the paint. Gives you a lot of control. You don't need a huge amount of masking. As you can see, I've only masked the areas by about 4 inches, and it allows me to get in behind things and under things, make a tidy job of everything. They reckon that there's nothing as boring as watching paint dry. Well, I think probably the second most boring thing is watching somebody else paint something. So I've sped this up by 500% just to show you how fast you can paint things when you're going 500% faster. I believe they've got drugs for this kind of thing nowadays. Anyhow, Happy New Year to all of my subscribers. I've got almost 30,000 people now who are interested enough to subscribe in my channel. So, if you do like to see the things that I get up to, why not consider subscribing yourself, and then you can be first in line to see each new adventure as it happens.